The impossible ship commander Elena Voss stood in the observation deck of the U's Defiant, her reflection barely visible against the backdrop of infinite stars. She had spent 12 years in the United Earth Space Force, rising through the ranks during humanity's awkward introduction to galactic society. The view never got old, but today it carried a weight that pressed against her chest like a physical force. The Defiant was humanity's answer to a question nobody had asked. When Earth joined the Galactic Consortium 15 years ago, they discovered a universe operating on principles that seemed almost magical. Every spacefaring civilization used quantum entanglement drives, antimatter reactors, and graviton manipulation. These technologies had been refined over tens of thousands of years, passed down through a careful system of technological exchange and mentorship between elder and younger species. Humanity didn't have tens of thousands of years. They had barely mastered fusion before making first contact. So they did what humans always did when told something was impossible. They found another way. Elena touched the cold glass of the viewport, feeling the subtle vibration that ran through the entire vessel. Deep in the engineering sections, massive diesel engines the size of apartment buildings burned hydrogen fuel in controlled explosions that would have made ancient combustion engines look sophisticated. The heat they generated powered thermoelectric converters stacked in arrays that stretched for hundreds of meters. It was crude, inefficient by galactic standards, and produced enough waste heat to require cooling systems that covered half the ship's exterior. But it worked. And more importantly, it worked using technology humanity actually understood. The door behind her hissed open. Lieutenant Marcus Chun entered, his tablet glowing with fresh data. He was young, barely 30, with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing you were about to make history or become a cautionary tale. Commander, we have company. Zelfian patrol fleet just dropped out of quantum transit 3 million kilometers off our bow. 6 vessels, frigate class, by their energy signatures. Elena turned from the viewport. How long until they're in communication range? They're already hailing us. Audio only. The translation matrix is having trouble with their dialect. Put them through. The speakers crackled with a sound like wind chimes being dragged across gravel. The translation computer struggled for a moment before settling into something approximating speech. Unknown vessel, you are operating in Zelfian protected space. Identify yourself and transmit your vessel specifications for registry compliance. Elena picked up the communication handset. This is Commander Elena Voss of the United Earthship Defiant. We're on a diplomatic mission to the Consortium core worlds. Our flight plan was filed and approved 3 months ago. There was a pause. When the Zelfian responded, even through the translation, Elena could hear confusion. Your vessel registry shows classification as a heavy cruiser. Our sensors indicate your power output matches this classification. However, we detect no quantum entanglement signatures, no graviton emissions, no antimatter containment fields. Explain this discrepancy. We use different propulsion technology. Chemical combustion driving thermoelectric generation. Another pause, longer this time. That is impossible. Chemical combustion cannot generate sufficient power for interstellar travel. Our database shows your species only achieved fusion capability 140 years ago. You should not have the technology base for advanced power generation. Marcus leaned close to Elena, whispering, Should I tell them about the engines? Elena shook her head slightly. They're about to figure it out on their own. The Zelfian voice returned, but now it carried an edge of alarm. We are detecting massive thermal signatures from your vessel. Temperature readings exceed safe operational parameters by factors of 10. Your ship should be melting. We have very good cooling systems, Elena replied calmly. This is not logical. This is not possible. You are using technology that predates quantum understanding. You are generating power through methods we abandoned 50,000 years ago. Yet your vessel functions at capital ship capacity. Explain how this works. Elena considered her response carefully. The truth was that nobody on Earth could fully explain why it worked either. The engineering teams had pushed past every theoretical limit, ignored every safety margin, and built systems that should have failed catastrophically during testing. But they hadn't failed. They had worked, then kept working, then worked better than anyone predicted. Asterisk. We don't use quantum drives because we don't fully understand quantum mechanics at that level yet, Elena said. We don't use antimatter because we can't produce it in sufficient quantities. We don't use graviton emitters because we just discovered gravitons exist 6 years ago. So we used what we know. We built bigger engines, better cooling, stronger materials. We pushed chemical reactions to their absolute limits and then found ways to push further. You are describing technological regression. Advancement moves forward, not backward to primitive methods. We're describing adaptation. We used the tools we had instead of waiting centuries to develop tools we didn't. The communication fell silent for nearly a minute. Elena could imagine the Zelthian crew running their sensors over and over, trying to make the readings match their understanding of physics. She had seen the same expression on every alien engineer who examined the Defiance specifications. Disbelief, confusion, then a creeping horror as they realized the implications. When the Zelthians spoke again, their tone had changed completely. Commander Voss, we are requesting permission to conduct a full sensor sweep of your vessel. This situation requires documentation for the Consortium Science Directorate. Permission granted. Sweep away. Marcus pulled up the external camera feeds on his tablet. The 6 Zelthian frigates had moved into a loose formation around the Defiant, their sleek teardrop hulls looking like art pieces compared to the Defiant's blocky, industrial appearance. Sensor beams played across the human ship's surface, probing, measuring, analyzing. Elena watched the Zelthian ships and remembered her first day aboard the Defiant 3 years ago. She had walked through the engine rooms with Chief Engineer Sarah Okoye, a woman who had spent her entire career making impossible things work through sheer determination and creative problem-solving. Sarah had shown her the combustion chambers, each one the size of a train car, where hydrogen burned at temperatures that would vaporize most materials. She explained how they used ceramic composites developed for hypersonic aircraft, cooled by liquid helium running through channels barely thicker than human hair. She showed Elena the thermoelectric stacks, millions of junctions converting heat to electricity through solid-state processes that were considered obsolete technology by Galactic standards. It's not elegant, Sarah had said, patting one of the massive fuel pumps. It's not efficient, but it's ours. We understand every bolt, every wire, every chemical reaction. If something breaks, we can fix it with tools we've been using for centuries. Try doing that with a quantum entanglement drive. The Zelthian communication channel crackled back to life. We have completed our analysis. Commander Voss, your vessel should not be functional. The thermal stress alone should have fractured your hull structure. The vibration from your propulsion system should have shaken your ship apart. The power generation method you use is so inefficient that you should require a fuel supply larger than your entire vessel just to reach the nearest star system. And yet here we are. Elena said simply, "Yes, here you are. This changes everything." Elena felt her stomach tighten. What do you mean? For 90,000 years, the Consortium has operated on the assumption that technological development follows a specific path. Species develop quantum understanding, then quantum drives. They master antimatter, then antimatter reactors. They discover graviton particles, then graviton manipulation. This progression is universal. This progression is inevitable. Every species follows this path. Until now, Marcus muttered. The Zelthian continued, and Elena could hear something that might have been fear in their translated voice. You have demonstrated that the path is not inevitable. You have shown that species can reach equivalent capability through entirely different methods. If this becomes known throughout the consortium, it will cause chaos. Younger species will question why they must wait for elder species to grant them access to advanced technology. They will experiment with their own approaches. The entire system of technological control that maintains galactic stability will collapse. Elena exchanged glances with Marcus. They had anticipated curiosity, maybe some diplomatic complications. They had not anticipated this. We're just trying to get to the core worlds for the trade negotiations, Elena said carefully. You cannot continue on your current course. The Consortium Council must be informed of this situation immediately. Your vessel must be detained for study. We have diplomatic clearance and a registered flight plan. You have no authority to detain us. We have the authority to protect Consortium stability. 6 frigates against 1 cruiser, Commander. Your vessel may be unusual, but you cannot fight all of us. Elena looked at Marcus, who was already pulling up tactical displays. The Defiant was designed as a transport vessel, but Earth designers had learned from millennia of naval history. Every ship that traveled through potentially hostile space needed to be able to defend itself. Lieutenant, what are our options? Marcus swiped through screens. We have the railgun batteries. 48 tubes loaded with tungsten carbide penetrators. The Zelthians are using standard Consortium shields designed to deflect energy weapons. They might not handle kinetic impacts well. Might not? We've never actually tested them against alien shields. This would be the first time. Elena took a slow breath. The Defiant had been built as a statement, a proof that humanity could stand alongside other spacefaring species without copying their technology. But nobody had really planned for what would happen if that statement was challenged. Zelthian Patrol Fleet, we're declining your request to be detained. We're continuing on our filed flight plan to the core worlds. We're not looking for a confrontation, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The response was immediate. Commander Voss, you are making a grave mistake. Stand down your vessel immediately, or we will disable you by force. Elena watched the tactical display as the 6 frigates began moving into attack positions. Their quantum drives allowed them to change vectors instantly, flickering across space in ways that looked like they were breaking the laws of physics. Which, Elena supposed, they were. The Defiant couldn't do that. Its massive engines needed time to build thrust, time to change direction. It moved through space like a freight train, powerful but ponderous. But freight trains were hard to stop once they got moving. Lieutenant Shun, charge the railguns. Target the lead frigate's propulsion systems. I want a warning shot that shows them we're serious. Charging now. Targeting solution locked. Ready to fire on your command. Elena hesitated for just a moment. This could start a war. One shot could escalate into a conflict that would doom humanity's place in the galactic community. But backing down now would doom them just as surely. If the Defiant was detained, if Earth's approach to space travel was suppressed, humanity would be trapped forever as a junior species, dependent on alien technology they didn't understand. Fire. The railgun spoke with a sound like thunder compressed into a microsecond. Electromagnetic coils accelerated a 10-kilogram tungsten slug to a significant fraction of light speed. It crossed 3 million kilometers in less than a second. The lead, Zelthian frigate's shields flared brilliant blue as the kinetic round struck. For a moment, Elena thought the shields would hold. Then the slug punched through like it wasn't there. It missed the frigate's main propulsion system by design, passing through empty space where a crew section would have been if Elena's targeting data was accurate. The Zelthian formation scattered immediately. ships flickering across space in evasive patterns. "Shields at maximum," Marcus reported, his voice tight. "All defensive systems online. They're returning fire." Energy beams lanced across space, brilliant strings of converted antimatter that could boil metal. They struck the Defiance shields, and the ship's entire power grid groaned under the strain. But the shields held, fed by the massive thermoelectric generators that could produce power in quantities that made up for their inefficiency through sheer brute force. Return fire. All batteries. Target their shield generators. The Defiance 48 railguns opened up in sequence, creating a stuttering rhythm that shook the deck plates. Tungsten slugs filled the space between ships, each one carrying kinetic energy that had to be respected even by shields, designed to stop antimatter beams. The Zelthian frigates tried to maintain their attack, but their shields were failing under the continuous kinetic barrage. These were patrol vessels, designed for policing and showing presence, not for sustained combat against an opponent who fought with weapons their defenses weren't optimized to handle. After 3 minutes that felt like hours, the Zelthian formation broke off, retreating beyond effective weapons range. Olana's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the command console, willing them to be still. Status report. Shields at 60% capacity. Minor damage to external cooling systems. Engines are running hot but stable. No casualties. Marcus looked up from his displays, his face pale. "Commander, we just shot at consortium vessels. This is going to have consequences." "I know." Elena straightened, pushing down the fear and adrenaline. "Open a channel to the Zelthian patrol leader." The connection established after a moment. The Zelthian's translated voice was clipped, professional, but she could hear the undertones of shock. "Commander Voss, you have committed an act of aggression against consortium forces. We defended ourselves against an unlawful detention attempt. We have diplomatic clearance, and we're within our rights to continue to the core worlds. This doesn't have to escalate further. It has already escalated beyond your comprehension. I am transmitting full sensor records of this engagement to Consortium Central Command. Every species in the galaxy is going to learn what happened here today. They are going to learn that humans built a ship that shouldn't work using technology we abandoned before your species evolved. They are going to learn that this impossible ship defeated 6 Consortium frigates." Elena felt the weight of those words settle over her. This wasn't about one ship anymore. This wasn't about one confrontation. The Defiance existence and its victory in this skirmish would ripple across the entire galactic community. "We're not your enemies," Elena said quietly. "We just want to be treated as equals. That is what frightens us, Commander. You have shown that you can achieve equality without following our path, without accepting our guidance, without waiting for permission. The implications of this are beyond military considerations. You have challenged the fundamental assumptions that hold our civilization together. The communication cut off. The Zelthian frigates held their position for another moment, then vanished in flashes of quantum displacement. Returning to whatever base they had come from. Marcus let out a long breath. "What do we do now?" Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about Sarah Okoy's words from 3 years ago. "We continue to the core worlds. We deliver our diplomatic message. And we hope that the galaxy is ready to accept that there's more than one way to reach the stars." The Defiance engines rumbled, pushing the ship forward through the darkness. Behind them, they left a wake of disrupted expectations and challenged assumptions. Ahead of them lay the heart of galactic civilization and a confrontation that would determine whether humanity's different approach would be accepted or crushed. Elena pulled up the navigation display, plotting their course. 3 weeks to the core worlds. 3 weeks for the news of this engagement to spread across the consortium. 3 weeks for the galaxy to decide what to do about the impossible ship and the species that built it. She had a feeling. Those 3 weeks were going to change everything. The Galaxy Response Day. Consortium Central Command occupied an entire moon orbiting the capital world of Valoris Prime. The facility had been built 12,000 years ago, expanded and upgraded by hundreds of civilizations, and now served as the military nerve center for a galactic community spanning 237 member species. In the Strategic Operations Chamber, High Commander Thalin Vex studied the tactical display with 4 of his 6 eyes, while the other 2 scanned the data streams flowing across secondary monitors. He was Krillian, a species that had been spacefaring for 46,000 years, and he had commanded consortium forces for the past 9 centuries. In all that time, he had never seen anything quite like this. The holographic replay showed the engagement between the Zelthian patrol and the human vessel for the 7th time. Thalin watched the human ship absorb antimatter beam strikes that should have disabled it, then return fire with weapons that were literally museum pieces on most consortium worlds. Kinetic projectiles, chunks of metal thrown at high velocity. It was like watching someone fight with sharpened rocks. Except these rocks were punching through military-grade defensive shields. "Analysis complete, Commander," said his tactical officer. A Ven named Saris. The Ven were crystalline beings who thought in pure mathematics, which made them excellent strategists. The human vessel generates power through thermal conversion of chemical reactions. Efficiency rating is approximately 18% compared to antimatter reactors. 18%, Thalin repeated. That's barbaric. Yes, Commander. However, the human ship compensates through scale. Their power generation systems occupy 42% of the vessel's total volume. The raw output actually exceeds our standard cruiser-class antimatter cores. Thalin's primary eyes focused on Saris. They built a ship where nearly half the interior is just engines? Essentially, yes. The design philosophy appears to prioritize redundancy and repairability over efficiency. They can lose multiple engine sections and maintain operational capacity. Their systems use mechanical components that can be manufactured and replaced using basic industrial equipment. Another officer spoke up, a Telani whose fluid body rippled with concern. "Commander, the political implications are severe. 6 member species have already filed inquiries about the human technological approach. The Yorth Collective is demanding an immediate consortium council session." Thalin turned away from the tactical display. The Yorth were a young species, only 8,000 years spacefaring, and they were always pushing against the technological restrictions placed on newer civilizations. If they learned that humans had bypassed those restrictions entirely by using alternative methods, it would validate every argument the Yorth had been making for centuries. What's the status of the human vessel? Still en route to Valoris Prime. They're maintaining their filed flight plan. Current projections show arrival in 18 standard days. And they're just flying straight here? No attempt to hide or evade? None, Commander. They're broadcasting their identification transponder continuously and responding to all communications. They appear to be treating this as a standard diplomatic mission. Thalin made a gesture with his secondary manipulators that indicated deep thought among his species. Either the humans were incredibly naive or incredibly confident. Neither option was particularly comforting. Assemble a response fleet. 15 capital ships, full complement of support vessels. I want them positioned at the Valoris system boundary when the humans arrive. Saris's crystalline structure flickered with mathematical concern. Commander, that force could be interpreted as hostile intent. The humans have diplomatic clearance. The humans also just demonstrated they can defeat consortium vessels using technology we don't understand. I'm not taking chances. But make it clear to all ship commanders that this is a security escort, not an attack formation. We're going to guide them in, and we're going to make absolutely certain they understand they're being watched. The tactical officer brought up a new display. Commander, we are receiving additional reports. The recording of the Zelfian engagement has spread through the civilian communication networks. It's being analyzed on 1,000 worlds. The reactions are varied. Show me. The display shifted to show multiple data feeds. Fallon scanned them quickly, his trained military mind categorizing the responses. Elder species like the Presidian League were expressing concern about technological unpredictability. Middle-aged civilizations were split between curiosity and wariness. Younger species were responding with excitement and renewed calls for technological independence. One transmission caught his attention. It was from the Yorth Collective's military coordinator, broadcast on open channels where anyone could intercept it. For 90,000 years, we have been told there is only one path to the stars. The humans have proven this is a lie. They have shown that every species can find their own way forward. This changes everything. Fallon closed the feed with a sharp gesture. Get me a direct line to the Consortium Council. They need to see this before it spins completely out of control. The connection established within minutes. The council chamber appeared in holographic form, showing representatives from 37 elder species. These were the civilizations that had reached the stars first, that had built the frameworks of galactic society, that maintained the careful system of technological transfer that kept younger species from destroying themselves. With power they weren't ready to handle. Council Speaker Vareth, an energy being from a civilization so old they had stopped counting millennia, addressed Fallon directly. Hi, Commander. We have reviewed the tactical data. Your assessment? The human vessel is militarily capable beyond what their technological base suggests. They've achieved equivalent performance to our standard combat ships using entirely different engineering principles. More concerning is their apparent willingness to engage consortium forces when challenged. A council member from the Keleth hierarchy, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol, spoke next. This cannot be allowed to stand. The humans must be compelled to abandon their deviant technological path and adopt standard consortium systems. We have procedures for technological integration. They exist for good reasons. Vareth's energy form pulsed with what might have been disagreement. Compelled how? We just watched 6 frigates fail to detain one human vessel. Do you propose we escalate to direct military action against a species with diplomatic status? If necessary, yes. The alternative is chaos. If word spreads that species can achieve spaceflight capability without following the approved progression, every younger civilization will abandon the mentorship system. They'll experiment with dangerous technologies without guidance. The result will be catastrophic. Fallon watched the debate unfold with growing unease. The council was fracturing along predictable lines. Elder species wanted to maintain control and order. Younger member species were questioning why control was necessary. The humans, probably without intending to, had kicked over a foundation stone that galactic civilization had been built upon for longer than most species had existed. High Commander, Vareth addressed him again. Your military recommendation? Fallon considered carefully. The humans are coming to Valori's Prime to negotiate. I recommend we let them arrive under heavy escort and use the opportunity to understand their capabilities and intentions. Starting a military conflict with an unknown opponent using unfamiliar technology would be strategically unsound. We need more information. You're suggesting we negotiate with them as equals? The Keleth representative's tone carried clear disapproval. I'm suggesting we avoid making assumptions. The humans built a functional warship using methods our best scientists claim shouldn't work. That deserves analysis, not immediate hostility. The council debated for another hour. Finally, Vareth called for a decision. The vote was closer than Thalin expected, but ultimately the Council agreed to his recommendation. The humans would be allowed to reach Valori's prime. They would be escorted by overwhelming force, and they would be closely monitored. But they would not be attacked unless they initiated hostilities. Thalin closed the connection and returned, his attention to the tactical displays. 18 days until the humans arrived. He began issuing orders to assemble the escort fleet, selecting ship commanders he trusted to maintain discipline even in tense situations. As he worked, part of his mind kept returning to the recording of the battle. The human ship absorbing damage that should have crippled it, returning fire with primitive weapons that somehow proved devastatingly effective. There was something about their approach that troubled him on a level beyond tactical concern. The Consortium had spent 90,000 years perfecting the art of war. They had refined weapons to maximum efficiency, shields to optimal protection, tactics to mathematical precision. Every species that joined the galactic community learned these methods, adopted these standards, and eventually contributed their own incremental improvements to the collective knowledge. The humans had ignored all of it. They had looked at the entire accumulated wisdom of galactic civilization and said, "We'll do it our way." And it had worked. Saris approached with new data. "Commander, we've completed deeper analysis of the human ship's construction. The engineering is remarkable. They're using material science we abandoned as too resource-intensive, combining it with computational systems that allow for real-time structural stress adjustment. The ship essentially reconfigures its own internal architecture during combat to compensate for damage. Is that even possible? According to our models, no. According to the sensor data, yes. They're doing things that should require quantum computing power we know they don't possess, but they're accomplishing it through brute force parallel processing. Millions of simple computers working in coordination rather than one sophisticated quantum processor." Thalin felt something like respect growing despite his concerns. "They're resourceful. I'll give them that. More than resourceful, Commander. They're innovative in ways we haven't seen in millennia. When you have access to the best technology, there's no incentive to develop alternatives. The humans didn't have access, so they invented their own solutions. Some of those solutions might actually be superior for certain applications." That thought followed Thalin through the next 18 days as the response fleet assembled and moved into position. Superior for certain applications. It challenged assumptions he had held for centuries. The Consortium way was the best way because it had been refined for so long. Except the humans had proven there were other ways, and those ways weren't just functional, they were effective. On the 18th day, sensors detected the human ship approaching the Valori system boundary. Thalin's fleet was waiting, 15 capital ships in a formation that conveyed both power and restraint. Not an attack pattern, but definitely not a welcoming committee either. The human vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel with none of the elegant precision of quantum displacement. Instead, it simply decelerated, its massive engines burning bright enough to be visible across millions of kilometers. It looked wrong against the backdrop of Consortium ships. All brutal angles and industrial practicality, where they were smooth curves and artistic design. "Open communication channel," Thalin ordered. The viewport showed Commander Elena Voss, the human who had commanded during the Zelthian engagement. She looked tired but composed, and her eyes took in the fleet surrounding her with clear understanding of the situation. "Commander Voss, I am High Commander Thalin Vex of the Consortium Central Command. You are entering Valori space under Level 4 security protocols. You will maintain current velocity and accept navigational guidance from our escort vessels. Any deviation from assigned course will be interpreted as hostile intent. Understood, High Commander? We're here for the trade negotiations as scheduled. We have no intention of causing problems. You've already caused problems, Commander. Your vessel's existence has created political upheaval across the consortium. Multiple species are questioning technological protocols that have maintained stability for 90,000 years. Elena's expression didn't change. We didn't set out to cause upheaval. We just wanted to build a ship that would let us travel between stars. We used what we knew how to build. You used primitive technology in ways that shouldn't be effective. You defeated consortium military vessels with weapons we consigned to museums before your species evolved. You've demonstrated that the entire framework of galactic technological development is not as universal as we believed. Is that a bad thing? The question caught Thalen off guard. What? Is it bad that there's more than one way to accomplish something? We're not threatening anyone. We're not trying to force our methods on other species. We just want to be part of the galactic community without giving up our own approach to problem solving. Thalen found he didn't have a ready answer. After a moment, he said, "Maintain your current course, Commander. We'll discuss this further when you reach Valori's Prime." The fleet formed up around the Defiant, guiding it deeper into the system. Thalen watched the human ship move through space, trailing heat signatures and vibration patterns that looked wrong on every sensor, but somehow functional anyway. 3 hours later, they reached Valori's prime orbit. The capital world sparkled beneath them, home to billions from hundreds of species, the beating heart of galactic civilization. The Defiant took up a perking orbit under the watchful presence of the escort fleet. Thalen ordered a secure channel to Elena. "Commander, you and your senior staff will transport to the Central Command facility in 6 hours for preliminary discussions. I suggest you prepare carefully. The Council is very interested in your ship and your methods." "We'll be ready, High Commander. And sir, for what it's worth, we really don't want conflict. We just want to be treated fairly." "Fairness is subjective, Commander. What you consider fair treatment might be seen as dangerous precedent by others. But we'll talk. That's more than some council members wanted to allow." The channel closed. Thalen turned to Saris. "Your assessment? Can we integrate the humans into consortium society without destabilizing everything we've built?" The crystalline being's structure flickered through complex mathematical patterns. "Unknown, Commander. But I believe the question itself may be invalid. The humans are already part of galactic society. They're already here, flying ships that work, despite our theories saying they shouldn't. The integration has happened, whether we approve or not. The real question is whether we adapt to acknowledge multiple technological paths, or whether we try to force conformity and risk losing species who see the human example as inspiration." Thalen looked out at the Defiant. So strange and wrong, and somehow right all at once. "Schedule the meeting for 6 hours. And make sure the Council representatives understand this isn't just a security briefing. This is a negotiation about the future of how we define technological advancement." As his staff moved to carry out the orders, Thalen allowed himself a moment of honest reflection. The humans had built an impossible ship. They had proven that the path to the stars was wider than anyone believed. And now the entire galaxy had to decide whether that was a threat to be eliminated or an opportunity to be embraced. He suspected that decision would define the next era of galactic history. And he had no idea which way it would go. Asterisk.